don't tell anyone, but you're listening to the best kept business secret and his podcast, dedicated to helping you understand the successful business secrets that others don't want you to know, making no secret of success. Now, here's your host and quite possibly the best kept business secret anywhere, Mark Ford.
Hello again, and welcome to your Best Kept Business Secret podcast with me, your host, possibly your Best Kept Business Secret, Mark Ford. Hope you are well. Hope 2019 is already treating you very, very well. Right, okay, so to continue the mini-series of business lessons learnt from Doctor Who, we are going to be specifically looking at Doctor number 7, the era of Sylvester McCoy. Colin, I've got some good news and bad news. The good news is that the series is coming back. What's the bad news? You're not. That was how, in dramatic terms, Colin Baker was let go as the face of the franchise. You have to feel for the guy big time. Rubbish stories, unrest behind the scenes, disapproval of the entire franchise from above. You can't help but feel that Colin Baker was being made to feel a scapegoat for other people. But here's the real kicker. He was asked to commit to a rough date of March the following year to film his last episodes so he could regenerate as others had before him. This meant it would have been almost nearly impossible for the actor to commit to any other work that he was offered. Quite rightly, after the shoddiness of his treatment, he declined to reappear, and you could hardly blame him. Add to that a newspaper article where he called the top man at the BBC, Michael Grade, a coward, and had many of his comments then taken out of context, it would also prove to make sure he was never asked again. Now here's our first lesson from the McCoy era, and he hasn't even appeared yet. The sacking or removal of the face of the franchise was being done very publicly. It's not the done thing in business. Back then it was done by media and press, and nowadays it can be done even easier with social media. Now, I'm all for the right to reply, especially if someone has come out and publicly attacked you. But where there is distinct acrimony, it's better left behind closed doors, and that will show some class. Later on, I get to describe the leaving of the 9th Doctor and how very, very different that was at the time. Now, public criticism tends to leave a stain on everybody involved. No one comes out of this very well. It would be fair to say that Baker didn't come out of this well, but to the real core of fandom, it was always acknowledged that he got a raw deal. The science of hindsight is probably the most exact science in the world, and given time, opinions change. Now, for using that right reply, I'm going to refer you to an edition of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. Now, this episode first aired in 2013 and centred on Ramsay attempting to help Amy and Sammy Buzzarglo. Now, I hope I pronounced that correct, but I'm just going to pronounce it like that for the rest of the show. And they were owners of Amy's Baking Company in Arizona. The episode actually marked the only time in the series that the owners prevented Ramsay from completing the restaurant's transformation. The owners' behaviours received negative attention on social media, and the manner in which they responded for this critical reception further fueled the controversy, prompting Forbes magazine to refer to this as an example of how a business should not react to comments posted on social media. Now, Sammy invested over $1 million to build the restaurant in 2006 in order to fulfill Amy's dreams. About 2 years prior to the episode's filming, bloggers began writing negative reviews of the restaurant's food and the owner's bizarre behaviours. Amy says the reviews were lies and states that they cost the restaurant a tremendous amount of business. Now, the day before Ramsay arrives, the camera crew witnesses an intense argument between Sammy and a customer. And it starts when the customer complains to Sammy that he and his friend have been waiting for pizza for over an hour, causing Sammy to lash out at him and order the two customers to leave, but not before insisting that the two customers pay for the drinks that they've received. Sammy then turns his attention to the customer's friend, while Amy threatens to call the police. And just when it appears that Sammy and the customers will come to blows, a cameraman steps in and escorts the customers out of the restaurant. Amy then berates and insults the other customers in the restaurant before storming back into the kitchen. Now, upon his arrival, Ramsey is initially impressed with the kitchen's good hygiene and organisation, though becomes more wary when Amy admits that she closes the restaurant if either she or Sammy are not there. Now, after the initial discussion, Ramsey prepares to sample some dishes, like he always does. Though he liked one of the desserts that he tried when he met the couple initially, he'd rather a very negative response towards the other menu items. The fig and pear prosciutto pizza was very sweet and made with some undercooked dough. The blue ribbon burger was not medium rare as requested, and with a combination of condiments that Ramsey finds bizarre, and a bun just basically dripping with grease. The red pepper ravioli exhibits a combination of sweet and spicy flavours that Ramsey called confusing, and he then learns from Sammy that it was mass-produced frozen ravioli despite the menu advertising that it was freshly made. And the salmon burger was overcooked and the presentation of it was, well, quite unappealing. Now, Sammy reveals to Ramsey that he doesn't tell Amy about the problems with the dishes, as he knows she does not deal with the criticisms very well. At another point during the sampling, Ramsey learns from one of the servers that neither she nor any of the other servers make any tips, but they instead go to Sammy, which is one half of the owners. Now, Ramsey discusses this with Sammy, who justifies the policy by saying he does much of the front of house work, though the server reveals Sammy does not always properly input the orders and often admits dishes that were ordered as a result of this. Now, later during dinner service, Ramsey criticises Amy and Sammy for the food he was served during lunch, and Amy responds by denying any wrongdoing whatsoever because Sammy refused to tell her the problems about the food. He also criticises her for using frozen ravioli instead of making it fresh, and announces to the customers, which, to be fair, he's famous for, that the ravioli is off the menu, which doesn't sit very well with Amy. Now, throughout the night, customers are seen complaining about the long waiting times, and several customers are shown sending back their dishes they disliked. At one point, Amy accidentally gives the wrong table number to a server. Now, subsequently, when giving food to another server as well as the table number, the server called Katie asks, "Are you sure?" Amy responds by accusing her of having an attitude problem and demands that she leaves. Now, when Ramsey witnesses a customer giving a tip intended for servers and Sammy taking it for himself, Sammy again defends his policy, stating that the waiting staff receive an hourly wage. And this prompts Ramsey to inform the customers that all the tips go to the restaurant's management and not to the servers, to which the customers reply, "Well, that's horrible." Sammy and Ramsey then get into a heated, profanity-laced argument in which Ramsey tells Sammy he is not allowed to take the servers' tips. Amy closes the restaurant and fires Katie on the spot. Sammy attempts to change Amy's mind, but Amy does not relent, later describing Katie, who leaves the premises in absolute floods of tears, that she is a poisonous little viper. Now, Ramsey returns to the restaurant the next day, only to find it closed. And Ramsey takes this opportunity to talk to Henry and Jessica, who previously worked in that same restaurant, and both described horrible working experiences. Henry actually claims that Sammy made him wash his car, and Jessica claims that at least 50 people were fired during an 18-month period when she worked at the restaurant. Ramsey then attempts to talk to Amy and Sammy, again telling them that they are doing wrong, and Amy refuses to listen and becomes increasingly aggressive and hostile towards Ramsey. Sammy even reveals that they had actually fired 100 employees and not 50. As a result, Ramsey realises they're not going to make any changes and leaves the restaurant, and in a concluding monologue states that this is the first time he's met two restaurant owners that he couldn't help. He also started talking to Pam, who was another worker, who admitted to Ramsey that on one occasion Sammy had actually hit her. Now, before leaving the area, he cites the fact that the restaurant has gone through 100 staff members, stating that Amy and Sammy have upset so much of the local community and are incapable of accepting criticism, and believes that they would not have adhered to any changes he would have implemented to improve the restaurant anyway. Now, if I can find the link, I'm actually going to put the link in the show notes for you so you can actually watch that episode. And trust me, your mouth is probably going to be just on the floor throughout it. Now, why did I tell you that? Well, after the show aired, the restaurant, which is located in a shopping centre, became a momentary tourist attraction. A plus, you may say. Well, the restaurant received extensive negative feedback on their official Facebook page. When the owners, Amy and Sammy, responded by denouncing people who posted negative comments, it provoked more of the same, not only on Facebook, but also on Yelp and Reddit. Forbes used this reaction as a poster example of how a business should not react to comments on social media, and the owners later stated they were hacked and they had not posted any of those comments. This prompted more negative responses, and the original comments and responses were eventually removed. As a result of the Kitchen Nightmares episode and Facebook posts, awareness of the incident caused the meltdown to go viral. The company hired a local public relations firm, and a second Facebook page was eventually taken down as well, while another one called I Support Amy's Baking Company, Bakery and Boutique and Bistro 100%, which is a bit of a bloody mouthful, appeared on May 15th that year. A press release announced that they would be holding a grand reopening in May 2013. And in April 2014, Kitchen Nightmares aired a special episode revolving around the events at Amy's Baking Company during and after the episode aired, with a new, specially recorded interview with the owners conducted by local reporter Anna Garcia. Amy's Baking Company permanently closed its doors in September 2015. Amy explained that the development stemmed from problems with the building's former landlord and not the TV series. She also indicated her future career plans included making desserts for a Phoenix area restaurant group and producing online instructional cooking videos. Nobody cares what she does now. You see, airing your laundry in public isn't great, and although the show was edited for maximum effect, I'm sure what it did do was destroy a failing business. Then there are those that think that Ramsay and the crew were also at fault. So, like I said, nobody ever comes out of this sort of stuff very well. Now, Baker didn't, Michael Gray didn't, Jonathan Nathan Turner didn't, and the Doctor Who franchise didn't either. Now, J&T believed that he was all set to do other projects, but the BBC management didn't. So here we are at the end of 1986 with no lead, no script editor, no stories, and a producer that had had their hopes crushed with only 4 months to go until production started of that new series. When news had got out of Baker's sacking, the production team and office were deluged with agents contacting them, making suggestions for lead actors and a new face for the franchise. Now, unlike the casting of the Sixth Doctor, when the producer was given free rein, J&T was ordered to do screen tests and auditions. And for his part, J&T told the press he was looking for a true eccentric, a polar opposite of the previous incarnation. Sylvester McCoy was recommended by another producer and then his agent for being very eccentric and an excellent actor. He was often seen on stage with his head on fire, being punched, putting ferrets down his trousers, or using a hammer to put nails up his nose. Seriously. He actually went on to go and do some children's TV work, including being a presenter on the anarchic, let's put it that way, Saturday morning TV show that was Tiswas, alongside Chris Tarrant, Lenny Henry and Frank Carson. There were still doubts, and he was auditioned and screen tested, which actually proved amongst those that were shortlisted that he was head and shoulders above the rest for the role. A press conference was called where photos of McCoy were taken with him in his everyday clothes, with the TARDIS and the retained services of Bonnie Langford as his companion. Now, you see, the press chose to focus on the fact that McCoy was a relative unknown, and were very, very lukewarm and underwhelmed by the choice. Now, perhaps the public's interest had peaked with the 20th anniversary, and it was also noted that the interest was beginning to wane. Many pointing to poor stories, poor effects, and losing touch with what the public actually wanted. As relaunches were going, this was going to be tough. Now, our next lesson is the determination that it takes to whip up excitement. You see, in today's world where there is constant noise, ironically, with the social media platforms of today, we have never been more connected, but we've also never been more disconnected. That's because there is too much noise. Everyone is their own media outlet, talking, posting, videoing, Snapchatting, tweeting and shouting, all at the same time. And as it stands in the world today, there is no such thing as an overnight success. To get something noticed, it could be weeks, months and even years. Now take the case of UK videographer Phil Beastall. At the start of December, a tradition has started where for some reason or another, people in the UK are eager to see department store John Lewis's Christmas advert. Its premiere is usually an advert that is about 3 to 4 minutes long that tells a story. In previous years, it's been about the man on the moon or a monster under a children's bed. This year, however, was the story of how Elton John became who he is today by the gift of a piano on Christmas Day. Ironically, John Lewis don't sell pianos. Now, personally, it left me a little underwhelmed, as all I saw it was as a blatant plug for his biopic that comes out in 2019. Then a video began to be shared all around the internet of a young man who was counting down to Christmas. It had some very emotional music and was done very much in the style of a John Lewis Christmas advert story. Now, the video ends with the man sat at his kitchen table on Christmas Day, listening to a Walkman and putting in a cassette to listen to the voice of his mother, his deceased mother. Now, I defy anybody to watch it and not feel slightly emotional, and I'll put links in the show notes. I'll also put links in the show notes for this, because I was very fortunate to have interviewed Phil for the Your Best Kept Business Secret podcast to talk to him about it. It had been a few just massively wild weeks for the fella, as the video over several internet platforms had been viewed more than 16 million times. The beauty of it? Well, the video cost 50 quid to make. £50. My point of this story here is that actually that film had been filmed 2 years prior to when it took off and caught interest. Hardly an overnight success, but shows you that sometimes to catch your customers or your client's imagination, you have to promote and share something that is relevant to your ideal market at the right time. I wonder how much money John Lewis could have saved with Phil Beastall and not Elton John. Now, the relaunch got even worse. Without Baker, the show required the Doctor to regenerate at the start of the episode as opposed to the end as per previous incarnations. The fact that budget and production wouldn't allow the show to use old footage of Baker, the writers concocted a situation where the TARDIS crashes onto a planet and as the enemies board it, turn an unconscious Doctor over onto his back, where it's revealed, even through some TV trickery, McCoy in a blonde curly-haired wig regenerating into himself. Comical is probably a word that I would actually use here. However, McCoy was actually a really good fit for the role, even if the timing sucked. He used the eccentricities of the famous intellectuals along with the cosmic hobo look of the second Doctor. As noted here, things tend to go around in cycles, and new script editor Andrew Cartmel wanted to take the show into a darker direction, with more social commentaries rather than the light entertainment flavour that JNT had doused it with whenever he could. However, his employment was so late in the day, it meant that he had limited opportunity to influence the first season of the McCoy era. These ideas tended to permeate the last 2 seasons, and therefore this era can be viewed almost as a tale of 2 parts. The more light entertainment one on one hand, and the darker, good storytelling part on the other. And here comes the next lesson. You see, McCoy's first season was inconsistent to say the least. Its tone and quality often changed, sometimes mid-episode, but it was because of several factors. Its rushed production, restricted budget, and because of prior interference from above, was becoming schizophrenic, trying to please the general public, the fans of yesteryear, and the moral crusaders that wanted the violence toned down and watered down. It was trying to do too many things for too many people. And in business, the safest thing to do is to know exactly who you're trying to please and how. Even more important is that whilst perfection is just time wasted, a customer, client or public have got a certain expectation of a minimum product or service that they're putting in. So if something isn't ready, rushed and inconsistent, it will become quickly obvious. It's at this point that customers or clients have a decision to make. Stick with you or find another provider for the same product or service that is consistent. Remember the story about the hare and the tortoise? Yep. As old as the hills, but it's right every freaking time. One of the other problems with this series was the Doctor's companion Mel Bush, played by pantomime queen Bonnie Langford. The character was very underwritten, to be fair, and became quite an annoyance with her screams at the end of the episodes, matching the pitch of the sting of the theme music quite perfectly, which, to be fair, was a talent in itself. Now, Andrew Cartmel, the script editor, was very aware that she wouldn't fit in with the vision of the show, and at the end of the first season was pretty much unceremoniously dumped from the series and replaced within seconds, and I kid you not, you should see it, by a polar opposite in the tomboy character of Ace. Now we're on to the second season of the Seventh Doctor, and he developed into a much darker figure than any of his earlier incarnations, manipulating people like chess pieces, and always seeming to be playing a much deeper game. A distinguishing feature of McCoy's performances was his manner of speech. He used his natural slight Scottish accent and rolled his R's. But a lesson to be learnt from a series of episodes that marked its 25th year should encourage business owners. There is a saying that states there is no such thing as a new idea. And they're right. But in the story that was called Remembrance of the Daleks, the franchise marked a change of something classic. But at the same time, it also marked the change of a classic that was of added value, that would still be around to this day. In this case, non-fans and some fans of the show usually used to laugh that the best way to get away from a Dalek was to go upstairs, because they couldn't. Until now. Now, one of the cliffhangers to the episodes was where the Doctor was locked in a basement as a Dalek chased him. And we're left with the image of the Dalek hovering above the steps, moving closer to the Doctor. Now, it's a very simple idea, but an effective one, and some 17 years before the new series, so after 2005, really got use of it. So, adding something of real value that can be used to a classic product or service is an excellent way of renewing it, selling more of it, or making more money from it. Now, the age-old issue of scheduling reared its bloody ugly head once again. And this one shows how, well, some decisions just can't be explained. You see, the show was scheduled on a Wednesday evening versus the long-running soap opera Coronation Street, which was getting about 12 million viewers. It was a decision, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, that was based on the stupid assumption that as a human, you can't be a fan of both shows. Seriously. Not every house had video recorders, and it wasn't quite in our own psyche yet to record and go back and watch it maybe a day or two later. The viewing figures dropped like a stone to an average of less than 5.5 million. It was not recovering the viewers it had lost in the hiatus, and more bad news was to come as the promotional budget in which the franchise was to run to was depleted again due to several production costs rising, and so McCoy's last series launched with about as much fanfare as a trumpet in the middle of the Arctic Circle. You see, the first episode of the last series launched opposite Coronation Street, and a World Cup qualifying match televised by its own corporation on BBC Two. It was a staggering decision and showed how little bosses not only viewed the franchise, but also its fans and effectively a paying public. You could argue that with decisions like this, you could have one of two trains of thought. The powers that be were either utterly incompetent or they really did want to kill the franchise. The first episode brought in only 3.1 million viewers, a rating so low that it gets the award for the lowest ever rating for an episode of Doctor Who in any era. Sometimes market conditions don't allow you to do certain things at certain times. And I know, I've already said that perfection is just time wasted, and there is no such thing as a perfect time. However, through this example of either incompetence or management malice, it goes to show that sometimes you are better holding your powder dry and waiting for a better opportunity to go with something. It's a bit like launching a brand new Christmas pudding on August the 1st, or a revolutionary health treatment on April 1st. It's just not credible that it could work. In this situation, the odds were firmly stacked against it. Could the franchise have survived if it had been relaunched on a different day opposite two different shows? Maybe. But in this case, the goodwill with the public had deteriorated to a point that people, rightly or wrongly, just didn't care. You see, whenever a new product or service is launched, there should always be a consideration put into the marketing budget. It's something that many small business owners just don't do. They start something or open something and they think people will then just find them. No, it doesn't work that way. It never has done. Whatever budget you have in business, the more you put into good marketing, the greater the chance you have of reaching more ideal customers and clients. It's one thing that bothers me with many business owners is that they spend way too much time looking at the bottom figure in their business, and that's the one where the money is coming in. You see, if as a business you spend more time and more money increasing the pool in which you mix with your customers and clients, the bottom figure of money kind of takes care of itself. In fact, it's likely to increase. Okay, a bit of acting here. I am the chief caretaker, and I am... No need to tell me, I know who you are. We've been waiting for this momentous visit for so many years. You were the man who brought Paradise Towers to life, the visionary who dreamed up its pools and lifts and squares, and now you have returned to your creation. You will make all those dilapidated lifts rise and fall as they have never done before. All signs of wall scrawl will disappear from the corridors of Paradise Towers. The floors will gleam, the windows will shine, and all will be made as new. Fellow caretakers, you know who this is. This is the great architect. Return to Paradise Towers. Bid him welcome. All hail the great architect. All hail. All hail the great architect. What shall we do with him now, Chief? Kill him. Now, Michael Grade left to go to Channel 4, and his successor, Jonathan Powell, previous head of BBC One, who had already tried to bin the franchise once, harboured a dim view of Doctor Who and an even dimmer view of its producer, Jonathan Nathan Turner. In one interview, he was quoted as saying, "I just wanted him to fuck off and solve it, or die really. But it had probably gone beyond solving. The only way of resuscitating it was to put a new producer on it, but we didn't want to resuscitate it." After the disappointing launch of this new series, and having not let JNT move on several occasions, Powell sensed his chances to do what Grade had failed to do. Now, arguably, by the end of 1989, the franchise, story-wise, was very much back on track. Story arcs, quality acting, and thought-provoking themes were sort of all back on our screens. But it had kind of run out of steam from the publicity it received back in 1985 when Grade and Powell had tried to take it off our screens then. So Powell showed no restraints in doing what he felt he needed to do, with a mist, not a fog, of vague assurances that it may come back with an independent production company and some sizable foreign, i.e. American investment. Doctor Who was quietly killed off. A franchise running 26 years, suffocated by people who treated it with little or no respect, seeing no further than the end of their noses. Now, in one of those bizarre twists of fate, Sylvester McCoy recorded his last speech as the Doctor on Thursday, the 23rd of November 1989, exactly 26 years to the day that the show had first aired. It was very understated. But to the serious fans of the franchise, it left people with that feeling that although it had been killed off, the name would always be out there, in people's minds and imaginations, and one day would return. The lesson here is the legacy that you leave behind. And by legacy in business, perhaps I don't mean the things that someone like Steve Jobs has left us with, or that Bill Gates and Elon Musk will probably leave behind. I mean, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? What do you want them to say about you when you're no longer here? Many brands and franchises have gone under, either dying a slow and quiet death or a very loud public one. But sometimes those brands can be revived in a slightly different format. Woolworths went online. Toys R Us lives on in Asia and surrounding countries. But here's what the Doctor said. There are worlds out there where the sky is burning and the seas asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Somewhere there's danger, somewhere there's injustice, and somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace. We've got work to do. We know that Doctor Who lived on to fight another day, but it was going to be a long wait for that to happen. So, here are the lessons that we've learned from the 7th Doctor's era. Number 1, it doesn't matter what someone does to you. The smartest and wisest thing to do is not air your laundry in public. No one ever comes out of it well, and it's way too easy to do, with people looking for things to parade some years later than when they were published or written. Businesses need to be more conscious than ever of being respectful to their customers, competitors, or fans. Number 2, don't expect to make a noise the first time, the second, or even the third time. There is no such thing as an overnight success, and to be frank with you, you don't need to be either. For some overnight successes, it may be 2 years. For others, like KFC founder Colonel Sanders, it could be as long as 65 years. Just keep creating hype and opportunities to get noticed. Number 3, take your time to get it right and be consistent. Notice I didn't say perfect, because that is just time wasted. If it's of good quality and you deliver the product or service at a regularly high level, then just do it. Rushing and doing things in half measures or cutting corners should never be an option for a business or its owners. Number 4, update existing products and services with added value. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, just add value to it. Can it be smaller, bigger, faster, more precise, easier to use, or better designed? It can be the simplest of things that can update a product or service that can make it look or seem new to clients and customers. It can also can it also be more valuable to them? And if it is, they'll therefore probably more willing to pay more and probably purchase more often. Number 5, know when you're going to be beaten. If market conditions aren't right, then keep your powder dry. Wait for a more opportune time than when competition is tough. Pivot what you're doing ever so slightly so that you're not operating in exactly the same space as others that may be bigger or more popular. And never launch a new product or service on April the 1st. Do I really need to tell you why? Number 6, marketing is the most important thing in a budget. Don't keep looking at the money coming in, because if you ever take your eye off the top of the funnel, i.e. getting more people into your sales stream, you will find that those numbers that you've been staring at will begin to get smaller or stand still. Keep a focus at the top and the rest will usually take care of itself. Number 7, think hard. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your customers and clients to say about you when you are no longer around? Can your brand live on, and what will it be remembered for? It would be a 10-year wait before we saw the Doctor again. Now, would it be worth it? And that's it for this episode of Your Best Kept Business Secret. Again, we're only up to Doctor number 7. That's weird, isn't it? There's another 6 to go. But I'm going to start putting out more weekly podcasts starting next week. And I'm going to be doing these every other week to keep other people's interests up. Otherwise, they get a little bit bored of Doctor Who. I appreciate that because there's a lot of hard work goes into these Doctor Who ones. A lot of research going on. A lot of small businesses out there needing some help. Look, in the next 2 weeks, guys, there is something really exciting happening. I'm telling you, it's massively exciting. Involved in something superb. We're going to have a new sponsor. It's all going on. So you need to be tuning in over the next couple of weeks to find out what's happening. Because it is you. It is for you guys. It is for you, the small business owner. It is designed. It is being made. It is being built. It is being put together for you, the small business owner, from start up to your first £1,000,000. Start up to your first £1,000,000. And I can't reiterate that enough because there's a lot of bollocks out there at the moment. There's a lot of rah-rah. There's a lot of 10x this, 10x that. Get up at 4 a.m. Go to bed 2 hours after you've got up before you go to sleep and that type of rubbish. It's not about that. None of that is happening. It is straight up, honest, great stuff that small business owners, whether they're just, like I said, whether they're just starting up or they're on their course for the first £1 million, are really going to benefit from. And as you can tell, I'm quite excited by it. I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm really, really excited about it. Look, if you enjoyed the podcast, please like and share it. Please tell your mates about it. I'd really appreciate it. Go over to iTunes, give me a review. I'd love it. If you want to get into contact, you can go to my contact page, which is www.markford.uk. That's www.markford.uk, where you find loads of other podcasts. You'll find loads of videos, blogs, books and stuff for you to have a look at and grow your business much faster. Otherwise, come find me on Facebook, come find me on Twitter. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Guys, you've been brilliant. Love you to pieces. We will see you very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Shh. Don't tell anyone, but you're listening to the best kept business secret and his podcast, dedicated to helping you understand the successful business secrets that others don't want you to know, making no secret of success.